So now I'm taking this piece to the side, and you want to make sure that the selvage edge is not sewn. You don't want to use that. That's not good fabric. You want the body of the fabric. Inch mark. You can also see the 1/4 inch on the presser foot or the J foot when you're sewing. Unfold this. I'm gonna end up cutting everything perfectly on the mat after I'm done with this. And so then this piece, I'm just gonna sew it down really fast, iron it, and then cut it. You always want to pin. This will be the top of the bag. I'm gonna cut it in here. We're going to have an inside fabric. We're also going to have an interfacing, and that is going to give the bag more structure and more stability. And we're going to have one back piece, like in the exact same fabric that we have as the front. So first, we need to cut this. How I do it is I eyeball what works. I like to cut clean strips of the entire fabric. So on this piece, I'm only going to use this, but I'm going to cut it all the way down, and then I'll use the next one on a different bag that I'm working on. So I just use this as a reminder. So it's going to be just over 9 inches, and then I'm going to cut it. That way I can throw the rest of the fabric away. I'm going to work close to the selvage edge because this part, once you unfold it, it's going to unravel into a bigger piece. So that can be used at a later time for something else. Okay? Now I have to work on this piece. So I only need one of these, and the problem with this is that the selvage edge is right here. So I typically do not like to cut on the selvage edge, but I'm going to make an exception for this because we only need one of these pieces. So one of the selvage edges is going bye-bye. So I'm just going to take this up like that. Oops. And then cut straight down, let's say 13, 13. Okay, last but not least, I have some interfacing. Okay, so how I do this is I take the pieces that I'm going to use in the direction I'm going to use them, like so. And again, I'm not a mathematical person, so this is why I do things the way I do them. And then I'm just gonna have this ever so slightly sneak in the bottom. You want to make sure everything's perfectly flat and straight. So, taking this to the edge, and and then I just start cutting. I cut to the actual piece. So here's what I have. I have a top piece, 2 lining fabrics, a back piece, and I also have the interfacing that I'm going to put with the zipper into a zippered pouch that's going to fit very comfortably in here. And I'm going to show you how to do that next. So I'm going to start putting this bag together. Again, this is a difficult fabric to see, but it would be right side up for the back of the bag, right side up, and on the bottom it would be the interfacing. You want to make sure everything is lined up perfectly. I put the zipper, I'm also right-handed, so I put the zipper face down with the zipper part on my right hand side, so it's always towards the bottom when I'm working. And on the interior fabric, this is same on both sides, but you're going to want to do interior right side face down. Okay? And then I pin everything down, and then I'm going to get ready to sew. So then I start. You want to make sure everything is lined up perfectly at 1/4 of an inch. So now everything is perfectly straight. And then here you go, there's the back. Something else I do is I always put a label, so if you start on the back first, it's very easy to stick in a label. Pop the foot out, go back to a J foot. The label's only going to be on the interior lining of the fabric. Place it where you want it to go. You can pin it down, makes it easy. And you can always take it out of the pin when you start to sew. So the label is perfectly centered. It's inside the bag, it's already sewn down. We're going to put back in the zipper foot into the machine, take out the J foot, and we have to iron this down and make sure it's going to stay. If you want to do a top stitch, so a top stitch is really pretty. It just gives your product a very finished look. Now is the time to do it. Or you can sew on the second part and then you can do that part. You always want to have the schmata handy because the iron is very hot and this is mostly plastic, so you do not want to melt your zipper. It makes it difficult to unhinge once it's been locked. So, and if you have a polyester ribbon like I do, you're going to have a problem with it and it will melt. So you put the schmata on top and then you iron. You just press it down. There you go. So now this is beautifully ironed and it's ready to sew onto the second piece. You take the front piece, you affix it to a piece of interfacing. Personally, I like the sew-in interfacing. I don't use the iron-on because the iron-on can get gunky and I don't like it, especially when I'm going to iron down all the stitches. I want it to be perfect. So that's something that I'm very picky. You take the back piece that has the zipper on it, and then I'll show you how I do this. Put it on top of the fabric, and then pretty side face down. So for me, I now start putting in the pins the wrong way so that I can unzip the fabric. You can't unzip it if the pins are done properly. I stop right before I hit the zipper, and then I go in and I unzip the fabric. And then I finish pinning this one little section. That's the only section I had left. And all the pins are in the wrong way, and that was only so I could unzip the fabric and keep the integrity. Okay, so then you put it in. You want it at 1/4 inch. And don't forget to backstitch. Right before you get to the end, you are going to want to re-zip everything, and if you hit a problem, pick up the presser foot. And then finish. When you get to the bottom, backstitch. So the piece is almost done. This is what it looks like. It has an inside and an outside. And when we are done, I'm just gonna go through, trim everything up so everything is perfect, and then we're gonna sew it together and we're done. So you are going to take the top piece and the interfacing, top piece and the interfacing. You wanna make sure that the bag is unzipped when you do this. Not all the way to the edge, but enough. And I take from the center and I go down. You want to line everything up, make sure it's lined up from the center, right? So it's a good spot. I pin it down. Look on this side, same thing. You want to line it up from the same spot, and then you pin it down. Make sure that you have all the pins in on the same side, because when you're sewing, you're going to want to take them out as you sew. So I'm going to sew around this section, the blue section, all the way, all 4 corners. And even this side. The bottom side, however, I'm going to put an X in there. So again, you want to stretch it just a little bit, make sure it's perfect. And then here, as a gentle reminder, I'm going to put in an X. The X means do not sew over this section. So everything is pinned up, and now I'm ready to sew. So I have this set up in the machine. I'm using the J foot, and I'm going to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. You always want to go over the zipper at least twice, because sometimes you can have a problem. I see my X, backstitch, cut the thread. And I'm going to do that down here. 1/4 inch seam allowance, backstitch, cut the thread. That way this little section did not have anything sewn over it. Okay? Now we're going to do a square bottom. So you put your hand back through the hole. You feel for the seam on both sides. So on this side, you feel for a seam, you make a rectangle like this, and then you pin it to place. And then you do the same thing on the other side. So once you have this set up, you're just going to measure 1 inch. Typically these have little triangles. You can use the triangles on the cutting mat as your guide. So it's not just the 2 outside, it's the 2 inside as well that you have to do. Now we're ready to sew this down. We're almost done. Now you're going to go through the hole, grab the other side. So I just put 3 pins in to cover up the open seam. I'm going to sew it up. Take them out. Pop this in. Looks beautiful. And here are the 2 bags side by side.